Kia ora and welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Once again, quarterfinal week coming up in Super Rugby. It's all heating up. The Canes on top of the table. We're going to look at why they're the best so far in Super Rugby and the players who are there playing for them who are superstars and are putting themselves into serious All Black contention both for the squad and for starting in Scott Robertson's team. Have a look at the Blues. What went wrong there as they lost the bonus point, and what does that mean for how they're going to perform during the quarterfinals as well? What to do without the Rebels now that they're gone? And also, World Club Champs. We've got an idea from a viewer that is an absolute cracker, but also slightly bizarre. So we're going to get into that. Your emails, your YouTube comments, of course, the Players Sport Ball to go to somebody from there. And the tipping cop has come to an end at the end of the regular season as well. So we'll see who topped that as well. So let's get going. We've actually got a special guest in the studio with us as well today. We've got James Parsons with me, but next to James Parsons, you'll see the Super Rugby Pacific Trophy. Jipper, you've been close to that trophy.
This is the closest I've been to it, that's for sure.
This is a stitch
This
up.
is Brins. This is Brins. Should be down in Christchurch.
Yeah, so down in Christchurch, Bryn Hall can see it from a distance. Fond memories. I think you picked that up in your last ever game for the Crusaders.
Yeah, it almost looks like that shouldn't be sitting there. It should be down in Christchurch. It deserves to be down in Christchurch. But no, I think with Crusaders not being in the top 8 and not being able to slip in, there's going to be a new home for that. So either the Blues, Chiefs, or whoever is in that top 8, it's going to be a new champion.
The Hurricanes, top of the table in Super Rugby. A good performance against the Highlanders. Jipper, what's made them top of the heap? Why did they finish top, even if it's only by a smidgen?
I think a lot of it's to do with that squad depth. I think between the Blues and the Canes, they have utilised their squad really well. And I just think championships are built on defence, and both those sides have, although it was the Blues defence that let them down, I suppose, to not allow them to finish top, but both of them are so high in those defensive metrics and so efficient in defence. We all know they can score points. I suppose for the Canes, the only issue whether you see it as an issue, they're ambitious on attack, so they do have a high turnover rate. So, coming into the finals, what opportunities may that present other teams to potentially attack? But outside of that, and with players like Asafo and Aumua coming back, and TJ Perenara, and Geordie Barrett, 28 carries, Billy Proctor, they've just got, I suppose, their senior players just playing so well.
28 carries. Yeah. What would a midfield back normally carry?
I don't know, but 28 seems ridiculous. I thought, I obviously text you guys, and I was really impressed with Rayasi's game. But then, when I went and looked at the stats, I was like, man, how did I miss Geordie just carting it up all day? But yeah, I mean, all their big guns played extremely well. Probably a concern for the Highlanders for how clinical they were.
That's probably the interesting thing about the Hurricanes, though. When you say all their big guns, in comparison to, say, the Blues, Bryn, there aren't as many big guns there.
Yeah, but I think at the same time, the experience that Jip touched on is pretty important. Like, you look at some of the names, I think, their tight 5, I think, has been massive this year. We talked around the start of the year, we're seeing, were they able to funnel with the likes of the Blues and the Crusaders, who we were talking about at the start of the year. I think, Namir is one guy that's had a massive year, who I think will be in and around that All Black squad with the way that he's played. You've obviously had Asafo Aumua at the start of the year, had a bit of an injury, but came back roaring on the weekend. And I think you even look at the loose forward trios has been massive in and around the 4, 5, 6 guys that they have there that have played at different times of the year. But in their locks as well, Ioane has been consistent in their locking states, along with Saxter and other guys there. So, look, I think the experience that they've had in their forward pack is setting them up to be able to have an opportunity to win this championship. Now, we've talked about Geordie Barrett, Billy Proctor in the outside backs, and obviously with TJ Perenara coming back with Cam Roigard, has added depth in that half-back positions. But I just think with the squad that they have, the amount of players that have played that kind of 40, 50 matches for the Hurricanes, along with the senior guys that are in that team that you've talked around playing very, very well. They're in a really good spot, I think, with the majority of their squad and the depth that they have to really, I guess, have a good crack at winning this championship, and knowing, Ross, that it's got to come through Wellington. We'll touch on the Blues and how they missed out on that opportunity, but having that home final for the semi-final and final, if they do make it to the final, will be massive with what we saw the conditions against the Highlanders on the weekend.
Now, we've got an interesting question that we've been sitting on for some time from one of the viewers. Now, please send us an email, Aotearoa Rugby Pod at sky.co.nz, or get into the comment section. Ian Beattie emailed us probably 2 months ago, but we've been sitting on it because, well, we're waiting for them to achieve something. He says, as an interested Scot who thinks Townsend's time has come and gone, how much of the Canes form can be put down to Clark Laidlaw?
It's a good question. I think he brings a calming influence and he's got those sort of young coaches around him. I think that balance of that coaching group is massive. But I do think just when there's success or failure, it's not one person that sort of dictates it. And I do think he's got the job at a point where the squad is so experienced, and that experience has really, I think, been their point of difference. Like when you've got guys like Ruben Love, Billy Proctor, these guys are going to be All Blacks, like off the back of this season. There's no doubt. You even mentioned Walker Leawere before, Bryn. Same with Xavier Numia. There will be a lot of fresh All Blacks in this squad, but I think he's kept it simple. Is probably what, from the outside looking in, he doesn't get animated. He's not an overly emotional guy. I think he's very methodical in his prep, and he does the work and he backs that, and he doesn't overcomplicate it. Like even when I've interviewed him after a few games, he just seems very measured and relaxed, and he's had some success in 15s. He's obviously had some success within the sevens ranks as well. So he's a bit of a winner. Like sometimes that attitude and that experience that he's had previously rubs off on others.
Bryn?
And I think also you can't underestimate Jason Holland's work and with what he did with that squad leading up to where Clark Laidlaw's taken over. And if you look back probably 10 to 12 years ago, I think when TJ Perenara and Bowden Barrett were coming through, they had a nucleus of really young players. And, Mark Hammond, even though they didn't get the results, they built that kind of culture for then when Chris Boyd took over, they were able to win championships. So I kind of feel it's very similar in terms of the squad that Jason Holland picked and the guys that you talked about, Proctor, Numia, and the young guys that are coming through, the loose forward trios that have been there for long periods of time. We're now seeing the best version of them with Clark Laidlaw being there. And sometimes as well, it is nice to hear a new voice when you've got that kind of experienced squad. And there are the assistant coaches, some of them that have been there for long periods of time, but some new guys as well. So I think it's all kind of coming at a very nice time for that group, and they're all playing very, very well. So Clark Laidlaw obviously needs to have a pat on the back for his work, but I think we can't underestimate what was done before, the 3-4 years before he came on as coach, the work that Jason Holland did with those young guys, and now we're seeing the best version of the guys like Numia, Duplessis, Karifi, and toe like that.
And for those of you who missed out on this, Clark Laidlaw is a Scot coaching in New Zealand and has been coaching in New Zealand for some time. So that's why Ian is so interested in having him and possibly taking over in the long term over in Scotland. Just to pick up on a couple of Bryn's points, we've also had another email come through from a regular on the comment section on YouTube, actually, Jimmy Kipp. I'm a Rieko Ioane fan, and I think he's clearly the best centre for the ABs, but geez, it would be hard to argue against picking the Barrett-Proctor combo.
Reeks is world-class, proven at international level. I think that combination will get a go, and when Billy makes his debut, he will have Geordie inside him just to set him up for success. The big thing for Reeks, he's had a challenging year, probably the first time in his career that he's suffered a lot of injuries. Obviously had couple of head knocks, obviously got an injury at the moment as well. So I think his focus will be just getting his body right and hopefully playing a part for the Blues towards the latter end if they get that far. Billy's different. Like he's got his ability to run lines and create space and obviously get himself into some holes, but sort of attract that attention of defenders that will free up the space for a Rayasi or a Ruben Love who's on that sweeping play. Will pay dividends, I think, at that test match level because it's something different, but it's those test matches are going to be won on these such fine margins, and it's those little efforts that he can deliver that'll set up opportunities for them to win test matches.
On the other hand, we've also, when we've seen Anton Leonard-Brown, we've seen a really good Anton Leonard-Brown this year, Bryn.
Well, we have, and I think, there's a lot of those guys, Rieko and ALB that have been in their All Black environment for a long period of time. So they've got runs on the boards, and Ray will know that, and the coaching staff knowing what the proven players that they are. But at the same time, with Billy, the thing that I love about Billy is that, Jippy, you could probably attest this as well, around his consistency, his good games in 8 and his great games at 10, and his bad games at 8, his good games at 10, and like that kind of consistency, it should be pretty well rewarded, I think, and he's been doing it for a very long time. And when the Hurricanes don't win, it's usually Billy Proctor isn't playing. So the couple of games that he hasn't played this year, they haven't won. And I think for me, it's all the little areas that Jip and I have talked around with him. It's a great line off a line-out strike. It's a defensive read. It's been able to work hard off the ball and been able to communicate and on the edge or been able to make good decisions. So he does that time and time again. So he's been doing that for not only the Hurricanes for a long period of time, but he's done it at international level with the New Zealand Māori. And I know it's obviously a bit of a step up, but he has proven that at international level against some international teams. So yeah, I would not be surprised if Billy Proctor is named. It's just going to be interesting because, we'd have to think that if we are going to talk about this, and it's probably going to come in the next few weeks when we talk about the squad, are they going to take 4 midfielders? Who's going to miss out? Just with how well Billy Proctor's been played. And that combination, I think, with him and Geordie, you could arguably say they're the best combination of this competition this year.
Let's not forget that Billy has absolutely carved up for the All Blacks 15 as well. So he's ready. You almost get the sense that he's ready to test himself at this next level at Test match. And you just can't ignore, as Bryn said, last 4 or 5 years, he has just been world class for such a long time.
Anton can play 12, 13. I mean, I think he prefers 13. But also, I think I've noticed in the last couple of years, he's become more of a direct runner, which kind of suits at 12 as well, a little bit. But they like a kicking game at 12. It's hard to imagine he'd be anything but a backup to Geordie there.
Yeah, I think Geordie, everyone knows that that's his sort of position. And then it is sort of fighting out for that 13 spot, which Rico's sort of got his hands on. But Anton's played a great sort of role off the bench in that 23 jersey. You've seen him actually play on the wing a lot for the Chiefs later in games. So he does have that versatility that we all know coaches like in a 23-man game.
On the wing, Salesi Rayasi. Every time he touches the ball, he does something brilliant. He doesn't seem to get a lot of game time. What do you think's going on there?
It's strange, because this is the way he plays, even when it's for Auckland or for the Hurricanes, you honestly can see him being an All Black. And it's just I know there's some quality wingers down there, but he just doesn't miss a beat. I don't have the answer. I almost put the question out to you guys on our chat group because I was just like, and it just looks so effortless. He honestly, I don't know what it is. He just, for some reason, he keeps getting overlooked, or he must play a role that they like off the bench, or they've got other styles that they prefer for their game management. But for me, he should be a starting winger at Super Rugby level every week, non-negotiable. I know we've got some great depth at the wing, but he just never puts a foot wrong.
In comparison to Kini Naholo?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that I suppose what Kenny has is a little bit of the unknown. He does have that X-factor. You look at the effort he did against the Blues when they were in Wellington, and he sort of can turn a game on his head. Whereas Salesi, 15 carries, I know Geordie did 28, but 15, he's really busy, he gets involved. He holds his width, but then also roams really well. I think we sort of compare him to Colin Betty in the way that he works across the field and gets himself engaged. So they're different players, but I do understand why coaches do like a Naholo, because they can absolutely win you games out of nowhere, whereas probably Salesi's more in that structured system and playing that team role really well.
In saying that, he is also a magician.
He is very, very majestic when he's in open space.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if he's going to have performances like he did on the weekend, we've just talked about this, every time he seems to put on the Hurricanes jersey or when he was in Auckland, he has those kind of moments in terms of being able to offload, line break, being able to finish tries and make it, having some great attacking ability. But I think, if he plays like he did on the weekend consistently at those kind of numbers, you'd have to think he'd get more minutes. And I think, having a guy like him come finals time, Jip, when the game's on the line, you can have someone like him with being able to do an offload or a line break. He's got a great kicking game as well. Got a massive left boot, which would be great in terms of being able to, if it's a wet night, you talk to our Sean Stevenson, who has a big boot in the fullbacks that are able to kick, how valuable that is, especially on the edge. So if he plays like he has on the weekend, and even he only played 7 minutes the last week, but had a massive influence being able to get that game as well. So, maybe it's something you might have to look real deep into, and just maybe we can go away and have a look, get some analyst work and really, earn a bit of money and see possibly why he hasn't played more. Because, I think anytime he's been on the field, especially the last 2 weeks, predominantly obviously this week, he was huge for the Cats, and a lot of those other guys stood up as well for the Hurricanes. But he's definitely one in good form. Hopefully, can see him in the final series.
Because sometimes you always think about it with wingers that maybe it's a defence frailty, but I just haven't seen that. It hasn't, and I suppose that backfield cover and that work off the ball, but he seems to just do all that.
He used to have the odd brain explosion. I think when you saw him playing for Auckland in the NPC, he'd try something in his own 22 and it wouldn't work. And there used to be the odd thing like that. But I don't feel like you've seen that for a little bit.
No, and he's more often, everyone knows his basketball background. So sometimes there were some loose passes and maybe the way holding the ball, but that's just not the case anymore. He seems very experienced. He just seems very cool under pressure, and as Bryn says, with the finals coming up, he's the sort of guy you almost feel you want on the field.
Bryn, the other person who's super special at the Hurricanes right now is TJ Perenara. Just unbelievable. Since Roy Gard went out, he came in being the most competitive man on earth and decided to show everyone that he's still got it.
Look, I think with Cam Roigard being out, it's obviously really bad for Cam, but, TJ would have been known that this is a really good opportunity for him to, I guess, get in the conversation back with the All Blacks. And you have to say, arguably now, with Finlay being injured for 8 weeks to 2 months, TJ Perenara is sitting very, very nicely to be that starting 9 coming the first part of the June series. So, look, he seems like he's come back a lot fitter. He looks like he's getting around the park really quickly. His passing game has been pretty consistent through coming back from a long-term injury, and I think his kicking game as well. They've kicked a lot more off 9 with TJ there. They probably haven't done that a lot previously with TJ and the Hurricanes. They kicked a lot off Bodie or even Geordie for the last couple of years, but I think having that element of being able to kick off 9 is going to be really crucial, and especially with what Razor and that coaching staff do around the contestable game, he's shown a lot more improvements and I guess has been really valuable for that Hurricanes team. So, yeah, he's definitely sitting pretty. I'm not too sure how that injury was. They talked to him after the game, and hopefully for Hurricanes fans and for All Blacks fans, it isn't too serious. And, we continue to keep seeing TJ play at a high level and, hopefully move forward with the All Blacks, because I definitely think he's going to be in there.
This might be recency bias, but I just can't remember him being in better form. Maybe it's just because I'm, as I say, currently watching it, and I can't probably recall all his games previously. No doubt he was massive in 2016, but I think, I don't know, his influence, I suppose that's what I'm most impressed with, his ability to influence games. Like he's a genuine match winner for them. And when he's not there, it is, they're a different beast.
I think that's really important, because I think, with a lot of the 9s, with Finlay Christie not being there, we're seeing a lot of the young guys coming through the Chiefs, with Paratima, Otham at the Crusaders, who else we got there? The Blues, obviously, Finners, and Funak has been really good. But if you look at the amount of times that his game management side, when he talks to a ref, it might be something really little, but the conversations that he's putting pressure on to refs, and in international games, that's really, really important to have those kind of key leadership skills. And he does that consistently, and being able to milk penalties, being able to, I guess, have the refs consistently looking at the Hurricanes and being able to see what TJ is saying, because most of the time he's actually right. And, with the limited experience I think we have without Finlay Christie for the last 2 months, you've seen the young guys come through, but the experience of what he brings in that, I think it's very, very valuable. And Jip, you'll know this, having leadership qualities like that on field and that IQ, very, very important come finals times or even an international game as well.
Yeah, great player. Great player. Asafo Aumua, he's the other person you are absolutely fizzing over right now.
Mate, to come back from the time he's had on the sideline and to put in that performance, we've sort of waxed lyrically before his injury, this is the best we've seen him play. Then to come back and deliver the way he has, and I think he could be the key piece, and it's nothing on the other hookers, but I feel like he is the key piece to the Hurricanes going all the way.
Yeah.
He's an X-factor player, but he's now got his I suppose his core roles crisp, and both sides of the ball, attack, defence, he can really turn a game more so probably on attack, the Hurricanes do like to have their hookers on the edge. O'Reilly's been doing a great job in his absence, but he's got something else, like his physical prowess. And I thought when Cody Taylor came back for the Crusaders, he definitely was a big change for them in getting those results, especially against the Blues. But, I mean, there's 3 hookers right now. I don't know how you pick who starts. With Samasoni, obviously, you've got Asafo Aumua, and then you've got Cody Taylor. I think, Ricky probably has to be in the conversation, definitely for All Blacks 15. George Bell, we know Jace Ryan really likes him, but those 3, man, I don't like, they've all got they've got different games. So it's really what style I suppose Jace Ryan and Razor want in the All Blacks, and you probably say Cody's got the inside running, but you can't ignore the performances that Asafo is now putting out on a consistent basis, but do not ignore how sharp he must have been in terms of the work he did, when he couldn't physically do it, the work and the prep and his ability to stay engaged with the group to come back and deliver like he did on the weekend.
Knowing Jace Ryan, knowing Razor Robertson, do you feel like they'll start with the guy they know? Cody gets the first crack and then people have to earn it off him?
You're only as good as your last performance. And I think Cody, with his runs on the boards and probably how he's played, and I think, let's not get it wrong around the connection around, with Razor and Jace being able to spend a lot of time with Cody and understanding what he does as a player. And I think with his experience, we'll probably get the first lick. And then I just think with Asafo, Aumua and Samasoni Takiaho, it just depends how they go. Samasoni has been in that environment, spending time with Jason Ryan closely. But I think you've got to be able to reward how Asafo's been playing. And so, like I said, I think in that June series, he's going to get an opportunity whether it is off the bench or even in the Rugby Championship, if he continues to be in the All Black squad for the duration of the year, he's going to get his opportunity. But I think to answer your question, Ross, Cody will probably get the start to get the first runs on the board, but Asafo will get his chance throughout the year.
I think the finals will dictate who's in 16. I agree. I think against England, you'll want to go for experience, and you want, like, Asafo's on the verge of being in the All Blacks consistently for the next 10 years. There's no doubt about it. So you don't want to spoil that confidence and belief. You want to, sort of just slowly get him in there, and because he can be a game changer. He can win World Cups. He is. There's just something special that you just don't see in other hookers around the world. And if he can get the level of confidence that he has with the Hurricanes right now at Test match level, I believe, and I don't want to put too much pressure on the guy, but he'll be in the same sort of conversations as your Malcolm Marxes and the impacts that they've had on the international game. I have no doubt about it. So I think for Samasoni and Asafo, they'll be watching very closely who steps up in these big pressure moments of the finals.
Yeah. Now, the pressure moments aren't likely necessarily to come against the Rebels. No. It's been almost 2 months since they won a game. They've fallen down the ladder, just snuck in at 8th spot. Is there anywhere where they're going to challenge the Hurricanes this weekend?
Well, I mean, all year they've actually been very high in the dominant carry stats, dominant tackle stats. So physically, as a pack, they have a really, really strong presence. They're missing some key game drivers, through injuries. So that's sort of rattled their flow, I think, a little bit. But if they're going to do it anywhere, they're going to have to do it up front and just take it directly to the Hurricanes. I just don't. There's no other card they've got to play. Unfortunately, they've just got to use that physical prowess they have as an 8 and look to dominate. But it's hard because the Hurricanes have dominated as well. They couldn't have got a worse. If they could have finished 6th, they'd give themselves a chance. But I think against the Canes or the Blues, the Rebels don't quite have enough to get across the line.
Yeah. And
we saw that, like, the draw are the same as the Canes and Blues. They're physical. They're going to come direct at you, and you either match it or you don't. And I know the conditions in Fiji, but if they don't win that, I suppose, contact area battle.
Yeah.
I don't really know what else to say. The Hurricanes are just in too good form.
Yeah. Against the Hurricanes, you're going to have to do this for 80 minutes and for long periods of time. And, obviously there's been a lot of stuff that's been off the field, but at the same time, that could galvanise them. And they might be thinking, like, no one's going to believe in us. No one's expecting anything of us. And, being in teams like that before, you've got nothing to lose. And so all you need is a bit of luck and you can get a bit of confidence from that. But I just don't think they have the capability and the depth to be able to go 80 minutes with this Hurricanes team, especially away from home. I think it's just going to be too hard. They might be able to stay from little parts of the game, little moments, but yeah, it'll be too much being able to stay on for the full 80. I think it's going to be a step too far for the Rebels on the weekend.
Do we bother worrying about the fact that this is the last ever game for the Rebels in their history, that the club is now over?
I think it's really sad, you never want to see sports teams, you've seen the heartache of a number of teams in the Northern Hemisphere from the Premiership League. Unfortunately, it's just, I think they've looked at every avenue, but financially it's obviously become, insolvent and they have to move on. But I think it's when it's this close to home, it's probably, the reality is it's it's a results-based business, and if you're not getting the results, it's hard to get the sponsorship dollar and the commercial dollar in a very, very tough market. And I think we all know Melbourne for rugby is quite hard. Even the Storm are second fiddle to all the AFL as well. So, and obviously cricket's big there and the football as well. So the oval sport isn't, it's not an easy place, I don't think, in Australia to make hay.
I remember being at a wedding in Melbourne and talking with someone at the wedding, and it took me about 10 minutes to realise that when they were talking about rugby, they weren't talking about rugby union. They just didn't know the difference between league and union. And I went, oh, right.
When did Cooper Cronk play for the Rebels?
Cameron Smith does not play at hooker for the Rebels. So that's not how this works.
So I think they have been fighting a little bit of an uphill battle from the get-go. But never nice to see. Not ideal for the comp either, I don't think. You don't want teams falling out. But through, when one door shuts, potentially the opportunity of incorporating a team from, it could be based in the US or Japan or Jaguares. I know there's interest there, but I mean, it's access to their international players and so forth. So how strong that may be. But I think, because it's taken so long to get the decision around the Rebels, I don't think there's any team in the position that can come fill that spot by next year.
Bryn, do we need a 12th team? Do we actually need to have a 12th team, do you think?
It could be 11, but I think, with two things that we are missing, obviously being under the Sansa umbrella with the Argentinians and with the Argentinian team. I think having an Argentinian team at some point would be good to bring them back. I know, their last year they were in the final in 2019 in Christchurch, but, whether they're able to bring all their players from different parts of the world to be able to come and have a really good competitive team like the Jaguares, I think would be important. And I don't know how this would happen, but I think, playing rugby in Japan and being able to bring another team in would be massive for the competition. I just think with the market and everything over there and with the players that are able there, which might be able to open opportunities for other players to play abroad in a Japanese team and still be able to play for the All Blacks, that's opening up a lot of things. But I think having a Japanese team and a Jaguares team, I think would add value for this competition, because I think at the moment it's great that we have the Australian got team in there, but I think since we've lost the South Africans, I think having someone else in a different market, whether it be with the Jaguares or a team in Japan, I think it'd be very valuable having those kind of teams within the Super Rugby Pacific.
If you look at the MLR as well, there's a lot of good talent, up there playing in terms of, the one thing about Japan is you probably don't want a Sunwolves situation. So you're going to have to get it creative. And the reality is that players that are up there, like me old mate, it's quite lucrative. So having an interest to potentially play for a side that doesn't offer that opportunity is probably not as attractive. So, whereas everyone talks about this American market, I suppose the players up there aren't paid as well as the Japanese. So is that an avenue to entice them? Because it's not just Kiwis up there. There's a lot of good South Africans playing in the MLR and Australians. So I don't know how it would work.
Because the seasons run concurrently, don't they?
Yeah.
So that makes it impossible.
Well, not necessarily. I'm just saying from a selfish point of view, I'm not really worried about the MLR. I'm thinking, there's obviously an attraction because there's a lot of players going up there for a lot less money. Is there something that can be created and based there, and you probably make sense for it to be in LA because it's the shortest, I suppose, flying distance. But again, it's and I think it's only 4 hours time difference. I don't know. It's
the LA market is very packed with professional sporting teams. Like Hawaii, I wonder whether that's the better option. I know we've seen Hawaiian teams show interest, and I think Joe Rokotoko and a few other people were involved in a bit a few years ago. But I just wonder, when it comes down to it, Hawaii, there's no big professional sporting outfit there, so you've got the ability to maybe dominate the market. I know the college football is big there, but if you go into LA, there's just, there's multiple basketball teams, there's multiple football teams, everything is there.
Ice hockey,
and actually getting into that market is
probably borderline impossible.
Yeah. It sounds hard. Why not? Let's not compete at the line-out.
I think both options we're probably talking about are hard.
Yeah. Well,
Jaguares is probably the most logical, but I just don't know. A lot of their players are playing in France and in Europe and some of them even in Japan as well. So again,
the only way
it's how you can remunerate them to motivate them to come play.
Bryn, I think the thing that I worry about bringing a new franchise in is legacy. You know, you've got to build a new fan base, you've got to start from scratch. It's also really hard bringing in new players and being successful immediately. The idea of using Panasonic or Toshiba, you've got a fan base. You've got all those elements already in place. You know they're going to turn up. And you also know that they've got the ability to bring in really high-class players who know how to win Super Rugby tournaments.
If it was able to be done in Japan, I think the level of players that they have, you look at Toshiba and Panasonic, I genuinely honestly think if they were put into the Super Rugby Pacific, they'd be there or thereabouts in a quarter-final stage with the level of rugby and the class of players that they do have here. Now, there'll be challenging elements to it, obviously playing in a new brand, but you look at Panasonic and the inter-cross-border that they had at the start of the year, and I know it was a lot of the younger players that were playing, but they won that game. You know, and so they didn't have a lot of their players playing as well at that time. So I just think if the companies in Japan were able to be open-minded and actually invest into Super Rugby and be able to let players, you know, two Japanese team, whatever company it might be, and say, well, we're going to get behind this, and, you know, we're going to have two teams that we're going to be able to allow our international players and our company workers to be able to play in this competition, I think we'd see a very, very good competitive market in Japan. And like you said, Ross, they have great fans over here, and it's something different. You talk around the touring element and being able to, when I get to do this, go to South Africa. Jip knows Australia's a great place to go, but, you know, going to Japan and experience a different culture, very similar to what we did in South Africa. You're able to experience something different and have fun with your mates. So, yeah, if it was able to be done, I think it'd be very beneficial for the competition and, I guess, the competitiveness and bringing some substance towards the competition, which I think we've been missing since the South Africans have left.
I wasn't going to go here next, but we're going to go here now. We've had a really good email from @Paula29, and he said, I have a dream. The top 4 of each World Rugby competition play a straightforward knockout format. I know it's fanciful thinking due to the congested fixture list. So play it in a year between Rugby World Cups and don't hold tests in that period for 2 months. Have the top 4 from the URC, France, England and Super Rugby, as well as the winners of the Japanese League. And he suggests the South American club, but they're all amateurs, so I don't think that's a good idea. Maybe we look to North America. Automatic qualification for the 2 finalists from the European Cup, then top 4 adjusted in their home competition. So that's interesting. Each play home and away, like football's Champions League, in a knockout format. That's, I think, a really good idea.
Oh, it's a great idea. Home and away is going to be difficult.
Yeah.
But is there something, you know, there's obviously this talk of World Club Champs. Everyone's highly motivated because everyone knows how good it would be for the game and obviously bragging rights up for grabs to see who can actually go out there and win. And I don't think it's all too far away from being a reality. Because I think everyone, from World Rugby down, everyone knows that this needs to happen to get better engagement. It makes sense. So I don't really have anything unique to say, but I'm right in behind it in terms of it must happen.
Would you be willing to sacrifice test footy for a couple of months of really world-class club footy?
You'd have to ask the All Black boys because I think, you know, obviously rugby's a lot, but I think if there is an incentive around, let's say money, for example, let's say there's $1 million prize coming from a private investor, right, that's just coming, I think that'd give you an incentive with players to be able to play for that alongside playing test match footy as well. So I think the incentive-wise, but I think also ego-wise, you know, you always, whatever hemisphere you're in, you always do think that you're the better one. You'd love to have an opportunity to do that. So I think both those two things there would be enticing, I think, to see who would be better. So, yeah, I love that idea. And I think any time we can have those rivalries or, I guess, a conversation that's been talked about from both Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, or anywhere around the world, to come to a conclusion around who's the best team. For me personally, I'd love to do it. Any chance to test yourself against the best players in the world?
I think the money's there. Like, that's going to demand good dollars. I don't think the money's the issue. It's actually lining up when it's going to happen and when all the comps run at different times, and there's already a massive schedule for that French top 14. So, you know, like how and when it fits in for them. So, you know, and I know it's in between World Cups, so, you know, do they drop part of the final series? I don't know, but there will have to be a shortening. On the years it's played, I think every comp will have to have an impact of somewhat that the calendar year won't look the same. Yeah. Is what it normally does, because otherwise you just can't fit it.
Once every 4 years, it's not that often, is it? I'm sure.
I think it should be, I think the goal is to do every second year.
Every second year?
Yeah. I think that's going to be the demand.
Yeah.
Like once every 4 years, like,
And I think,
I hang out for a World Cup. I don't want to hang out for this. Like, let's go every 2 years.
Every 4 years, teams change in that time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You might have a really good team for that 2 years, and you want to put yourself against the best within that two teams. There's obviously so many things that change within squads. So I think 4 years is too long to get, I guess, a really good understanding of who the best team is at that time in the world.
Now, there was another thing in here that was a little bit more controversial. A very, I would say, radical approach to the way that you do these home and away fixtures, where he suggests that you add up the score from both games, home and away, and the team with the most points is the winner. Bryn,
They do that in Japan.
Do they?
Yeah, they do that in Japan for the relegation. You go home and away, as the example that you're talking about, and it's the aggregate of both those games. So, yeah, it's done, and I guess, for that first game, it has a hell of an importance of, I guess, where that scoreboard is, because when you go into the second game, you might be 14, 15 points and, talking around solutions around what it's going to look like. Probably actually takes away from actually just trying to get the result in terms of being able to, I guess, have an understanding of the aggregate and how much points you're from behind.
I don't think home and away is going to be an option, so I think it's going to be one hit wonder.
Yeah.
I see what they're getting at, but I don't know this football way they do it. But isn't it you get more points for the points you score away?
Well, if you have an equal amount of goals, the away goals win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would make sense if there was more away points.
Yeah.
If they won one each, and the team with more away points.
Well, that takes us to his next radical suggestion, that the away team gets 10 points for a converted try and the home team gets 7.
Oh my God. I'm out.
He's out, he's stepped out.
Now.
You've lost
He's
me.
stepped out. It's got
Absolutely lost me.
I really like the first one.
I've tried to come with them, but
The second one, I'm not with the second one. What I would say is that when you play in the rain or you play at sunshine, you're in two different sets of conditions.
Yeah.
You're going to get different score lines, and it's not fair to add up the aggregate.
It's going to be picked apart.
Yeah. Unless everyone was playing in indoor stadiums, then that could work.
True.
But, when it comes to those other elements, it's hard to imagine it working. But the World Club competition at Paula29, I appreciate your input. It's a great idea that hopefully will get off the ground. I quite like the idea of it being relatively rare. But also, I suppose, if you want it as a consistent money winner and a brand...
I just think you'd hate to miss out on your moment if you're humming and it's that you're humming in a 2 year span and it's 4 years away.
Yeah.
You've missed your...
Yes.
You've missed your opportunity.
Yeah.
To brag.
Yeah.
Or you could just be like the Crusaders and just be great all the time.
Wow. Are we going to kick off there, are we?
Oh, it's just I think they're allowed to have a little blip after winning 7 titles in a row. Like, my gosh.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's have a quick chat about the Crusaders before we move on to what's going to happen through the rest of this competition. What were the positives for the Crusaders this year and what were the negatives? I want to start with you, Bryn, because obviously you know this team inside and out. Where do you see the positives? Where do you see the negatives? As they dipped out, they couldn't make the quarterfinals despite a late push.
One guy would come back and then they were out for another 3-4 weeks. Another guy would come back and he's out for another 3-4 weeks. And so they weren't able to get the job done, which is probably the worrying part. I think in a lot of time that I was there, we still had a lot of injuries, but we were still able to pick up wins. And I think the disappointing thing, this probably leads into the negatives now, is that they weren't able to make the top 8. And I don't think that's an acceptable standard in terms of the competition, with only having 12 teams, that they weren't able to make the top 8. And I think, the last 2 games, they were able to, I guess, play the footy that I think would probably get themselves into a final series, but they weren't able to make those adjustments throughout the year. So, then I think also as well, one thing that they're going to have to try to figure out is who's going to be their 10 next year. Because I think with Fergus Burke going, who was probably the next guy after Richie Mo'unga, they weren't able to be able to get the consistency in their position. So whether it's going to be in-house with Rivers Reihana, Te Haka Kimara, or obviously Riley Hohepa, whether they see that or they go somewhere else, it's going to be very, very important for them. And I think also as well, it's been touched on around the coach next year. If Rob's going to stay, I think they'll do a pretty good internal review around what that's going to look like. And what went wrong, what they could have done better. But that's probably been my summarized way of describing the Crusaders this year, both positive and negatives.
And what would you do with those 2 points? Who would you back as your 10? And is Rob Penny tenable for next year's coach?
Look, I think that's going to be very important with what the players think with Rob. And from all accounts, I think with what you saw in the last 2 results, there is an element of care for Rob and what he has done, because you don't get performances against like the top of the table Blues and having a performance in that environment if you don't have the trust of your coach and I guess a care for your coach. And I think with the way they finished Moana Pacifica, it seemed like they were getting their stuff together at the back end of the year. So I think it's going to be massive around that review, Ross. If the players believe that he's the right man for the job, then we'll probably see that within the next couple of weeks around what it's going to look like. And I think more so management as well, being able to have a review process and what that's going to look like will be very, very important. And the 10s, look, I'm not too sure. I think the disappointing things for those 10s this year, I think the forward pack, I talked around a lot this year with the Crusaders, they weren't able to get the momentum. And any time you don't get momentum in games, whether you're a world-class 9 or 10, it's hard to be able to win games when you're not getting the job done up front, set piece wise, and in the contact area. So if they get that right, then those guys will be able to play on top of them and be able to, I guess, play in a better way, being a first five. But then you can also go out of the region as well, Ross. I think one guy that I would probably go at, and Tripper's probably not going to like to hear this, but a guy like Zayden Sullivan, I think with Harry Plummer, Bowden Barrett coming back, and I think with Stephen Perifetta, with the way he's playing with a 10 and 15, I think Zayden Sullivan would be a great acquisition for the Crusaders as a number 10 and being able to come down south and I guess earn his stripes in terms of wanting to be a first five and I guess have an opportunity to play with, I guess, a stock gap of how many first fives and quality players there are.
Been that idea.
But if we're talking around... If we're talking around opportunity, and if he wants to be a 10, there's a stopgap for the next 3 years with Bowden Barrett being there. Harry Plummer's had a great year, and you've got Stephen Perifetta there. So unless he wants to commit himself to being a fullback that covers 10 or vice versa, if he wants to have an opportunity to play 10, it's a great chance. Like, would that not be a good opportunity for a guy like Zayden Sullivan to come down south and ply his trade there? With all those injuries, with those guys coming back, having a conversation with a guy like that, would that not be beneficial for him?
What about Harry Plummer? I know he's a Blues man through and through, but he was pushed to 12.
I'm going to walk off set at this rate.
No, but I mean, it's a serious question. He's been pushed out to 12. He is the second string 10 there. He's got multiple years of experience within the Blues setup.
It's a great idea. I agree. It's a great idea. Great player, but I don't want that. Personally, selfishly.
Yeah.
I think he looks good in blue. Those are the guys.
Yeah.
I think probably Harry Plummer's probably more akin, in terms of experience and what he's delivered.
Blues Player of the Year this year.
Yeah.
Primed to be picked up by somebody else.
I think we signed him to a 10-year deal on the night. I think I suppose you've singled out a number of Josh Ioane's obviously another option they could go for. But like a Carter Gordon isn't silly. Like if there's no space for him, he's going to be a Wallaby. I don't think Joe Schmidt would be against it.
Probably not.
I don't know what oh no, he hasn't played enough test matches, so.
Oh, the rules can always be bent.
Oh, beauty.
Especially with a new coach.
Beauty. Well, you guys can have Carter Gordon. I'm happy for that trade deal to happen.
Yeah, just pull out the big money, go get Romain Tamak and see what happens.
Chipper, it's for the better of New Zealand rugby, mate. You've got 4 first fighters down in the Blues, mate. 4 first fives.
Mate, if we win the title this year, it'll be easier to consider, but if we don't, you need that depth, you need that squad depth. If you've got your 7 titles, it's coming home. Even though I've just talked up the Hurricanes all night. Oh, great.
Oh, he can't let go of his family. Oh, can't let go.
Absolutely brilliant.
Stick around. All right. Okay, then. We've been accused of ignoring the Highlanders again via email and via the comments section. Let's give them a little bit of love while we're talking about 10s, because we've had a question come through from Stephen Hall, and he was talking about the Highlanders playing the Brumbies in Canberra and whether they stand a chance. So I think we should come to that in a second. The first question is from Dan Hursty 6684. And he talks about Miller and Faleafaga, the 2 10s down there at the Highlanders, and where they look like they might end up stacking up within the system. I mean, the New Zealand rugby system.
Well, I think they've been a big part of it already through schools and under-20s, so their pathway is definitely, within it. And both players had a national development contract, now they've been promoted to Super Rugby contracts. So, I mean, the essence of the next step is runs on the board.
Yeah.
It's the only way. Like the pathway, they're in it. It's really in their hands. And I think we've seen from Cam Miller, certainly, like, he can kick goals. He seems very calm and composed, and has sort of demanded selection a little bit. I suppose at the start of the year, everyone was sort of talking about Faleafunga and obviously Patchell as well. But he's done it, and probably ever since that was the game in Tonga. He's sort of I think he got a lot of confidence out of that game. Faleafunga, I've seen a lot of great stuff at NPC, but again, it's just time in the saddle, being patient, not trying to rush. They're young men. It's not a position you want to rush in, because it can go from bad to worse pretty quickly.
So the answer is probably no to that question. But Stephen Hall, we're going to give you the player sport ball, because we haven't talked a lot about the Highlanders, and I feel your pain. Unfortunately, they're kind of down the table a little bit and maybe aren't the talking point in the same way. But let's finish with your question. Can the Highlanders better the Brumbies in Canberra this weekend?
One thing that they're going to have to do is they're going to have to obviously have really good discipline. They had 2 yellow cards on the weekend, which is going to be huge, and not being able to be disciplined in finals, especially in Canberra. And I think the forward pack, the 8 and the 4 or 5 forwards that they have off the bench, are just going to have to be able to be physical and being able to win the contact area, both defensively and attacking, for long periods of time. Because the Brumbies are different at home, they're a different beast. Even though they do have the opportunities to be able to, I guess, win away from home. But I think one thing as well that the Highlanders will get opportunities, because Jib's talked about it a lot. Their defensive percentage this year in tackling hasn't been great, even though it might be different at home. It's just been able to, can the Highlanders take those opportunities, and can they do it when they get inside the 22? If they have 6 entries, can they make four tries or score 4 or 5 times being in those 22 zones? Because if they do that, then they give themselves every chance. But the physicality battle will be massive for them. If they can do that for 80 minutes, they give themselves a chance. But even then, I think being in Canberra, it's going to be, unfortunately, a step too far for the Highlanders.
If there's ever a team in New Zealand that can deal with Canberra at this time of the year, and I know that sounds ridiculous that I'm talking about temperature, but man, it is cold, and it's foreign to, say, the Hurricanes or a Blues team that would have to go there. It isn't. That's the temperature they live in. They train, they prepare, and I feel like if they can go, because the Brumbies are the Brumbies, they haven't changed for years. They've got a forward pack, and then they're going to be running fairly direct, and they've got a little bit of X factor out wide with pace. But the nuts and bolts of that Brumbies side is up front, and what they do there. So they're going to need a bounce back like they gave after the Blues. I think they can do it. Like, there's starting to be a few cracks in the Brumbies' performance against the Force as well. Like, that was no given. Yes, they're favourites, but I don't think it's beyond them.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about the tipping comp before we wrap up this. Because
can we not?
You're top handy. He's coming at 98 out of 407. It's not the end of the world. The problem for you guys is you have loyalties that get in the way necessarily of the appropriate picks being made week on week. The winner of the tipping comp throughout the regular season, Canes in exile, 67 points, 33rd overall for all of the competitions in Super Rugby tipping. So pretty good, 67 points. So that's pretty strong. Another guy on 67 points was Canes 88, but didn't quite get as many points differential picks there. I'm down at 50 at 62 points. You're at 98 with 59 points. Brynner picked Crusaders all year long, and he's down at 219 with 52 points. But we know that your picks are actually pretty good outside of that, Bryn, so you get a pass mark.
I had a shocker this week, lads. I think I actually missed the Moana game versus Crusaders. I actually did my picks late, lost that one, and then I went to be able to try say the Rebels are going to win. I think I picked another one as well. So, yeah, I went with my heart too much this year, lads.
Well, Canes in exile, please send us an email, Aotearoa Rugby Pod at sky.co.nz. We'll get you on the show in the coming weeks. So get in touch. We'll sort it all out, get you on, get some of your really good insights into how this competition plays out, because you obviously know your footy pretty damn well. Let's talk this week. Chiefs v Reds. First game. Chiefs. Straightforward?
For me, yes.
Yeah.
The Reds, they've just been up and down all year. You know, they've had slip-up games. Again, when they should have put a Waratahs side away to send a message, just didn't quite do it. So I know the Chiefs obviously struggled against the Blues, but I still think, they're miles ahead of the Reds in terms of consistency.
Right, Reds did pick up that win in New Plymouth last year over the Chiefs. They might have a bit of belief.
Look, I just think if they're forward pack, they play a very, very direct game. And, I think if the conditions are right and they're able to get a lot of ball through ill discipline, which the Chiefs have shown in the later part of this competition and giving teams opportunities, they have a chance when they get into that 22. And they've got enough of their phase play shape in terms of their outside backs and, guys that I think one-on-one can beat defenders, but I think they'll be too classy for the Chiefs. The Chiefs will be too classy for the Reds.
I think they're another team that, man, they need to be in the top 40 to home final. Like, their conditions are hard to play in, and they're comfortable there. Same with Fiji and Drua. I think all these teams, I think it's going to be pretty straightforward with who's winning what. Probably the only one that I'm really excited about and unsure is probably the Brumbies Landers.
Right. So apart from that, it's home teams all day.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Same for you, Bryn?
Yep, exactly the same. I think the only one really, I think, is the Highlanders being able to go to Canberra and beat the Brumbies.
I'm going to back the Landers.
You're going to back the Landers?
I don't know. I think every time they've had a poor game, they have bounced back with a very, very... I don't know. I think of all the teams to go to Brumbies, they've probably got the better chance.
Yeah. Is this a switch it up Wednesday once you've seen the team name kind of situation?
No, I'll stick strong. I'll stick strong with Ethan de Groot and the lads.
Right, yeah. Bryn, do you think that the Highlanders stand a chance?
I think it's just going to be a step too hard going to Canberra. Jip and I, we've talked. We're not massive on the Brumbies, but they are in a position where they've been able to get to third. They haven't won consistently enough. They would think in the margins where they should, but they found a way to win. So based on that and the way that they have been this year and being in Canberra, I'm going to go the Brumbies.
I told you guys the Tars would finish last, and now I'm telling you the Highlanders are going to Canberra.
Actually, how did that work out for the ways you guys picked the top 8?
The only one that I was different was the Crusaders and Rebels. I didn't have the Rebels in there.
You didn't have the Rebels in there, and you had the Crusaders and Bryn, do you remember?
I went Chiefs, Blues, Crusaders, Hurricanes, Brumbies, Drua, Waratahs and Highlanders. So the Waratahs and the Crusaders are the only two that I've obviously buggered up there. I didn't have the Reds. I didn't have the Reds either. So, yeah, a couple of misses from me.
Yeah, not too bad, though. I mean, you did pick the Hurricanes as the dark horse this year, and they have well and truly delivered on that.
They have delivered and then some.
They have. I had them 4th, so they've gone 3 better. So, yeah, but they were my dark horse. So, Chipper did talk around the Waratahs and got that right. So
yeah, no, bang on, actually. So, no, I picked them last. Sorry, Darren Coleman. I know you're a fan of the show, so I feel bad saying that and boasting about that. But
I have to say to Darren Coleman, if he is watching, the post-match interview that he did after that game was so mature.
Oh, he's a great bloke.
It's been a really difficult season. The man's walking out of a job, and for him to stand there and be so honest and so settled and understanding of what the situation was, and just put himself out there. I thought it was an incredible post-match interview. I thought the Stan guys did an amazing job of it, and I thought he was fantastic.
Yeah, I caught up briefly with him at the Moana Pacifica game, and he was exactly, I was like, oh, how you going, mate? And he was just very measured. He was like, look, it is what it is. We've got this game next week. I've just got to focus on doing that. He's a seriously impressive dude under pressure.
Yeah. There aren't that many coaches who would front up to an interview like that at that point of the season.
No, but he is very well liked and respected in New South Wales. So I think he does. There's a reason for that. He does front when you've got a front. Well,
we look forward to the quarterfinals of Super Rugby Pacific for 2024 this weekend. What have we got? The Chiefs Reds, Canes Rebels, Blues Drua, Brumbies Highlanders. Of course, you can catch them all on Sky Sport in New Zealand. So make sure that you get into those, and you can catch us every week here on both Sky Sports platforms and on Rugby Pass. So thanks once again to James Parsons and Bryn Hall down in Christchurch. It's been another good week, and thank you very much for tuning into the show once again, whether that's on Sky's platforms, Rugby Pass's platforms, as an audio podcast. Thank you for sending in your emails at Aotearoa Rugby Pod at sky.co.nz. We appreciate your participation in the show, and we'll throw you a player sports ball when we can along the way. And thank you very much to Eden Park for the nice pits as well. So appreciate your support. See you next time. Mā te wā.